Hi, welcome. It's me, Anthony Brown, you know, aka the ghetto practitioner, um, the guy that operates care coordinated system recovery environments, guy that wrote the book From Park Bench to Park Avenue. I'm all of that. But right now, I just want to talk to you about a subject that's near and dear to my heart. Sometimes I think about the homeless community a lot because if you followed me from anywhere, you know that I was homeless from the age of 14 to 37. I got my life in order, turned it around, went to treatment, went to school, you know, came in with an eighth grade education. Now I have a master's degree. And my biggest thing is since I've been out on the streets, I want to understand more and share more about our individuals or our brothers and sisters or mothers and fathers and some grandparents and kids and all that stuff that's out there, living in the streets. And I sat and I listened to all the things going on in today's times, and I'm seeing how people have been dealing with homelessness and what they're planning on doing with homelessness, and wondering how come homelessness is going out of control, just all of these different things. And I sit around and I just think about this all the time. It's like, well, what's the solution? Now, how did I come from being incarcerated, no education, strung out on drugs, to this individual that's able to work in hospitals or develop programs, write books? How did that transition occur? And so what I'm led to believe is that it's actually possible. That's the bottom line. And what I want to do is share with you today on this podcast on some of the things to look at. Because when you think about homelessness, there is no one size fit all. Now we tried all types of different ways of dealing with it. We tried, you know, was it housing first, give somebody a place to live. We tried shelters. We tried all kinds of different things, hospitalizations, institutions, all those different things. And yet then the result is we still have people living on the streets. And I know right now there's this big old push. Let's just get them off the streets. Okay, well, where are you going to put them? I'm starting to see where it's coming. Well, we're just going to, if they don't take treatment, we're going to force them to go to treatment. Or if they don't take treatment, we're going to force you to go to jail. From my experience, my own personal experience, and from dealing with other individuals out there in the street, that method is not going to be too successful. And let me tell you why. When you're homeless and you have nothing, absolutely nothing, no property, no food, your health is deteriorating, you have no money, you have no loved ones, you don't even have yourself anymore. You don't have nothing. And the only thing you grasp hold of is the simple fact that you got your freedom. And a lot of times people say, well, people who are homeless have freedoms, but look what they choose. Well, there's a lot of different things that go into being homeless. And today I want to sort of peel back that onion. I want to unwrap this gift so that we can get a deeper dive into it. And that's what I want this podcast all about. And so I sat down, and again, all I do most of the time is just think, which is great because now I can think. And I do some research now, and I look more into this, and I came up with a lot of different things. Now, one thing I want you folks out there to really think about deep down in heart. Where do homeless people come from? How many babies do we see out there in the street? Very few. Because most kids, if they're born out there, some sort of child protection agency will scoop up that kid, or even in the hospital, they might not give the kid back to the parents because there's not a place to live, and they figure it's not a place for them to be able to take care of them. And yeah, if you're out in the streets, you cannot take care of a baby. That's a given. And there's reason behind that. And so as I'm looking into this, I want to share what I call the 5 pillars of homelessness: healing beyond shelter. And I look at this, and there's so many different nuances, so many different methods and ways and ideologies But when you look at the crux of the problem, I broke it down into 5 different pillars. And I thought that maybe I can open up conversation about homelessness, not just statistics, but I want to look at it from the human side. Now, we know the first when you hear the word homelessness, the very first thing people think about is somebody's pushing a cart or holding up a sign in the corner. That individual in the back alley or underneath the bridge or in the park, sleeping by the bench. And it's a little bit deeper than that. It's an emotional, physical, spiritual, social, and psychological experience. And those are the 5 pillars I'm going to bust out today. Again, let me repeat it. We're going to look at the emotional, physical, spiritual, social, and a psychological experience that goes on with people who are out there in the streets. And this is how I wrap up in my 5 pillars. Today, I want to walk you through each of these with some real stories and examples so that we can begin to understand more about homelessness than just an absence of a home. Now, again, and it's really fascinating because I am out there in the streets. I'm out there developing Brown Manor. I'm working with individuals out there in the streets, and I'm talking to them all the time. And I'm observing behavior. And I'm watching and I'm listening. And I see people in their naturalistic environment. And I'm retaining this information so that I can be able to share something with you individuals that's out there who doesn't see it the same way I do, but it's imperative that we start looking in a different direction. If what we're doing now isn't working, then what will work? And so I want us to take a deep dive into this. Let's look at the emotional aspect. Now think about this. Just think about this. Imagine losing your home. Not just your physical space, but the comfort of knowing where you're going to lay your head at. Imagine that. Okay? The loss isn't about a shelter, it's about losing stability, privacy, and a sense of control. Now, you can span that out, not to just the individuals that live indoors, but what about that person that has set up a camp or a tent or something like that? And all of a sudden, I'm going to tear down your tent and I'm going to take you away from that. That can create all types of emotional disturbance. And the fact of the matter is, what happens when a normal individual loses something that they depended on? We grieve it. People grieve that. I once spoke with a man who said the hardest part wasn't sleeping outside, it was feeling like he didn't exist anymore. And it's really fascinating because I spoke with people who once said, you know what? I am a nothing. I don't want nothing. When I don't get nothing, I don't feel nothing. That's a tough spot to be emotionally, where you just don't care anymore. And I'm sure if I brought that up to any individual that would grieve a loss, how do you feel at the point of impact? How do you feel when you lose your sense of security, your sense of control? And so when I think about, yeah, here's a new method that's coming out, we're just going to arrest people or force them to go into treatment, individuals are going to grieve that freedom. And that's some stuff that I want for people to start paying attention to. Expand your knowledge base. Look beyond just that individual that's out there in the street. Think about what it's like to actually have emotions, especially something like grief. It's fascinating that the emotional weight people carry already out there, they carry shame, fear, grief, all these emotions that we really can't see. A lot of times it's hard just to even look past the outer appearance of an individual. But think about what they're going through. Think about what you would go through. On the flip side, I remember once I looked a lady in the eyes and I called her by her name, simply said, I'm glad you're here today. And you know what she did? She broke down in tears. She was happy that somebody treated her with dignity and respect. And a lot of times we lose sight of that. And that's why I said, it isn't about food or money that lifted her spirits. It's about dignity, being somebody, feeling like they are somebody, feeling like you are somebody. And so some things to talk about. And so the whole thing about the emotional pillar sums it up into a couple words, and that's feeling human again. Our job, if you choose to accept it, is to figure out how to have somebody feel like they're a human being again. You can take somebody, and Lord knows, and trust me, I had the experience. You put me in jail. Do I feel like a human being? I'm treated like an animal. I'm in a cage like an animal. Yeah, granted, I did some wrong things. But what about somebody that's just out there sleeping on the streets and you're taking away their house and you're saying you got to get off the streets? They don't know what to do. They don't know how to deal with these emotions. They don't even know how to tell you that they have these emotions. And they suppress it. And you put them in a cage feeling more grief, more loss. And that's why I say this just taking somebody freedom away, I don't think that's going to cut it. So we need to have conversations like this. We need to chime in and say, okay, Anthony, what can I do to actually find some solution to this situation? Let's look at the second pillar, physical. Homelessness wears down your body. I'm out here back east in Ohio. Think about the winters when the temperature dips below freezing. People have to choose between frostbite or trying to stay awake all night at a bus station just to stay warm. I know when I left home at 14, I was from Steubenville, Ohio, and I remember what it's like to just have the clothes on your back and you curl up in the fetal position just trying to get some heat. Health conditions that are manageable for most people can become life-threatening. I've seen somebody with untreated high blood pressure, and it just fell out right there on the streets. There's all kinds of other things. There's people out there that has diabetes. There's people out there that some have cancer they don't even know. There's all kinds of infections going on. All of these physical things are occurring. And so how do you even do that? How do you even do it? Even though we go and I appreciate everything that people who open up these food services place and kitchens and things, I appreciate that. Okay. Food is good, but is that a balanced meal? Do we get the protein that we need to help repair different cells? Do we get the adequate amount of carbs that it takes in order to sustain energy? Do we get enough fat to make sure that we're insulated? What about vitamins and minerals? Again, people who are at the food banks, I love you. People from churches that pass out meals, volunteers that's just sitting there making sure everybody got something to eat. I love you. But think about it this way. What does it need to have the human body sustain itself? And if you get a sore and you don't have protein to help with tissue repair, you're going to get some sort of wound or some sort of abscess. And if you don't take care of the wound, you're going to get infection that gets to your bloodstream, and then you become septic. And so when we're thinking about all of this stuff, what can we do? If somebody cuts their finger out there, think about it. They don't even have access to clean water, much less soap to wash it off with. And so as we're looking at how to deal with this homeless situation, what are you going to do if you just put somebody in the house and you don't give them medical treatment? And it's really fascinating because medical treatment is getting slim, and slimmer. It's getting more expensive, less accessible. And that's to the the typical people that live indoors. I know personally, I got a job, okay, great. I work in healthcare, great. I got insurance, great. How long does it take for me to see a doctor? Well, And I know a statement like that would open up all kinds of different comments. But I'm not into the debating society. I'm not into being argumentative. I'm into wanting to pass out some facts so that we can say, hey, look, I have more information on how to deal with individuals, because the bottom line is every one of us is just another human being living in this thing called an imperfect life. How do we navigate this thing called life? And so when it comes to dealing with people who don't have the education, because believe me, from my past experience, I didn't have the education. When I was out there being homeless, I didn't understand that a cut can get infected. I didn't know if I had um, diabetes. I didn't know if I had high blood pressure. I didn't know nothing about cholesterol clogging my arteries. I didn't know any of that. I probably was a heart attack just waiting to happen. I wasn't eating anything nutritionally sound. I was eating out of trash cans. And so I understand that. And now that I have the education behind me, I want to set it up so other individuals can learn from a person who not only been there, but somebody who has studied for years and years and years on how to find the best solution to the situation. That's what we're about today. The physical pillar reminds us that housing just isn't about comfort. It's about survival. If you got a roof over your head, you're escaping the elements. You're less likely to catch pneumonia because you're not out there in the weather being rained upon or snowed upon. You're more likely to be able to get warm when you're indoors. But again, just because you move somebody indoors, are you going to allow them or find some way or connect to some entity so that they can get a physical, get lab work, possibly get some x-rays to see what's going on? Or are you just going to put them inside and, okay, good luck? Are you going to be able to get someone who's going to educate them on how to have a balanced meal? Are you going to have somebody there that even knows what a balanced meal is? See, there's more than just putting somebody indoors. If we want to solve this problem, if we're sincere about resolving this issue, let's resolve this issue. Let's look at it realistically, holistically. Let's look at it together. Let me move on to the third segment, which is spiritual. For some people, homelessness shakes their faith. I've heard people say, if God really loved me, why would I end up here? I've heard that time and time and time again. Where's God at now? Others find that their faith is becoming their anchor, the flip side of the coin. I have hope. I know God's going to come. I believe this will happen. The only reason why I even want to wake up in the morning is I know one day it's going to be better. I have faith in that. Even the outcomes. At one point in time, I used to carry, I found my Bible in a trash can in prison. Okay, 27, 27 years ago. And I shared this story and I'll share it again. When I found that Bible, it was covered in all kinds of fluids. I don't know what kind of fluids. It was in a prison trash can. All the pages were stuck together. And I sat in my cell and I peeled back every page, one page at a time, drying it out from the sunlight that came into my little slit of a cell window. But even in that situation, because of that Bible, I found hope. At least I wanted to believe that one day things are going to get better. I had to hang on to that faith. Because when you ain't got nothing left, then what do you got? When you get to the point, and people don't understand this, but I understand it 100% because I've been there, I lived it, I thought it. When you ain't got nothing left, you ain't got nothing to lose, so who cares anyway? Put me in a jail cell, put me in an institution, it doesn't matter because inside, I'm lost. And so spirituality doesn't always look like religion for some. Again, it's about meditation. For some, it's about journaling. For some, it's just sitting back, staring at the sunset or the sunrise, and finding peace within yourself. I know when I was living on the West Coast and hanging out by the beach, when I just sit and listen to the waves and watch the water move, I believe that there was something greater than me. And I knew if it can have the wind blowing the way it did and the water rushing in, I got hope. And that kept me hanging on. It kept me hanging on. But again, going back to our original, that emotional thing, what happens if you take away that hope from me? What if my hope is lost? You can put me in a place and physically I'll be there, but spiritually and emotionally I'm not. And sometimes we wonder, well, how come treatment doesn't work for people? Because we're not looking at it holistically. This is why I'm here sharing these 5 pillars. So spiritual pillar is all about meaning, purpose, and a belief that tomorrow can be different than today. Moving right along. The 4th pillar is about social. Human beings, according to some theorists, have this herd instinct. We want to belong. We want to be part of. And homelessness is the exact opposite. It's about isolating. Many people have lost contact with their family, their friends, even their communities. Society often turns its back. People look away. They cross to the other side of the street, or they just pretend not to even see the individual sitting there. You know how that feels? That isolation is crushing. It's crushing. I think about community meals I've attended to where people came not just for food, they came for conversation. They came for I watched the man smile and laugh with others around the table. Said, "Hey, it's the first time in weeks I had somebody that understood what I was going through." I had an individual that I put into place, several actually. I gave a place to live, room, board, water. Even helped them go down to get food from the church to make sure the refrigerator's full. And every day when they woke up, the very first thing they did was go right back down to the park. And for a while, I sat there and I couldn't figure it out. Why would you give up living indoors to go back to the park? And now I get it. They felt isolated. They felt isolated. In this room, or if you're in a room by yourself, great. I'm off the streets. But what about that sense of community that I have at the park? The same thing comes when people get into recovery and they get sober. It's like, okay, here's something new. Here's all these new strangers, but yet all my friends are over there. And I feel alone. And a lot of times, people, you could be in a crowd of people And if you don't know them, you haven't had some sort of connection or some rapport with them, it's like you feel isolated. And you go back to what you know. What do you what's gonna happen when we just remove somebody from being on the streets and just put them into treatment? They're going to experience all these things, and we don't address none of these. You think treatment's going to be successful? And think about the finances behind that. Sure, we're going to invest a whole lot of money into this for what? And we don't look at this part? What are you going to do when you're sitting in treatment and you're forced to be there, and you, as the clinician, say you got to get up and go to group? And here you are with a room full of strangers. What's the probability, which is going to be slim because it won't work? What's the probability of moving your whole homeless camp into the same treatment center? Sure, you'll have all your friends, but what you're going to do is create another homeless camp indoors. And so, as we're treating individuals, if we so insist on taking people and forcing them into treatment, you're going to have to look at these different pillars that you're going to have to work on simultaneously to get that individual to be successful. And that should be our goal, is success. Not to make me look good, not to make our facility look good, not to get grants, but to allow that individual to become whole again. That's what it's all about. Belonging changes everywhere. When people feel part of a group, whether it's in church, a recovery meeting, or just group sharing coffee, it restores dignity. It restores dignity. Think about it. How do you feel when everybody knows your name? When everybody says, hey, welcome, I'm glad to see you. Where you been? I miss you. How do you feel as an individual? But for that person on the street, when they're almost invisible, how do you think they feel? So many of us don't understand the root cause of a lot of this stuff because we don't know. And this is why I am doing this podcast, so that now you can know. And I'm a firm believer is once you're informed, you no longer can claim ignorance. Everything else is just a choice. Let's look at our final segment, psychological. Homelessness and trauma go hand in hand. It does. Many who are unhoused have survived abuse, violence, and tragic loss. And a lot of people are homeless because of abuse. I know a lot of people stay homeless because of abuse. I know right now, and I just recently experienced it. There's a couple out there. The guy's the dominating figure. He's very abusive, and she's just stuck. And we tried to pull her out and put her into treatment. And he did everything possible to get her out of treatment. Battered woman syndrome. That's tough for the female to deal with. There's people did an intervention. In the beginning, she asked for help. They did an intervention. And as soon as he said, hey, come back, I miss you, I need you, she came back. Why? Because she's in fear of her life if she stays away. The streets themselves create a lot of trauma. There's constant stress. There's fear of theft. There's violence at night. All of that trauma compounded with all of the stuff that you've been through to get there all takes its toll on you. I once met a veteran who told me he slept sitting up with his shoes on. Been there, done that. A ready-made roll is what we call it. And it's really fascinating because I can tell you again, speaking from experience, I know what it's like to basically sleep with one eye open. A lot of people, I can I can power nap like a champion. I can lay down for 10 minutes and I'm fresh for 7 or 8 more hours. Where did that come from? From being out there on the streets. A lot of times people say, how can you sleep when you're around people? Because I can sense whenever I'm in danger. My body reacts to it. The normal sounds, you could be loud and playing music and doing all that, and I still can go to sleep because that's normal. But the minute the music stops, my body automatically go into fight or flight response. My senses are aware and I'm on high alert. And the same thing, and that's because of the trauma. Not just being on the streets, but the trauma that I carry with me to the streets. And that's a whole different podcast I'm going to get into. And just being out there is traumatizing. You got depression going on, you got anxiety going on, you got substance use going on. And people don't know that those things is just your coping strategies, your coping mechanisms. That's what you got. That's all you got. It's not a weakness, let me tell you. It's all about survival. I have to have anxiety to become alert. I'm going to be depressed and isolate and not care. Like I said, if I don't feel nothing, when I don't get nothing, then nothing matters. I've also seen the power of healing. A person who have had the opportunity to have trauma-informed counseling allows them for the first time sometimes to feel that they're not broken. Once we start working on that psychological pillar and put that into the grand scheme of things, we come to realize that being in recovery from homelessness requires more than housing. It requires a safe space where we can begin to heal, not just our bodies, but our minds and our souls. As I walk through these 5 pillars, the emotional, physical, spiritual, social, and psychological, each one shows us that homelessness isn't about lacking a home. It's about a whole human experience. When we strengthen these pillars, we just don't put a roof over somebody's head. We literally rebuild lives. If you're listening out there and you're wondering what you can do, here's my challenge. Okay, here comes some solution. You go, okay, Anthony, I listened to that. What do you want me to do? Here you go. How about having some empathy? Let's start right there. Empathy doesn't cost you nothing but a little bit of time. Try putting yourself in that person's shoes. I didn't say sympathy. I said empathy. A big difference. I'm going to have you do your homework. If you don't know the difference between sympathy and empathy, look it up. That's what I ask for you to do. If you want to start a first step, start being empathetic to the individual that's out there on the streets. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of people are one accident away from being homeless. A lot of people is one trauma for being homeless. And so put yourself in their shoes. Think about it. And it's easy to do. We all grieve. We all have emotions. A lot of us have some physical ailment at one point in time. A lot of us felt isolated. So it's easy to draw empathy from your own experience. When you see somebody out there, don't be afraid to look at them, even though they may not look back. Help them restore some dignity. Help them feel like they're somebody, because they are somebody. This is somebody's mother, somebody's brother, somebody's son or daughter, grandparents. They're human beings like every one of us. Learn your name if you can. Volunteer someplace. Support organizations. But let's support the ones that don't just physically meet their needs, but the emotional and psychological part as well. You know, this means a lot to me, this topic. I have literally invested my entire life into the subject, whether I lived in it or whether I studied it. This means a lot because all of us are human beings. All of us is in this thing called life together. All of us is going to leave one way, and that's through expiration. Time is a precious commodity that shouldn't be wasted. So what are you going to invest your time in? How about helping somebody else? How about thinking differently about someone else? How about being part of the solution instead of complaining about the problem? I want to thank you all for joining me in my episode of Beyond the Streets. The next time I go on this topic, I'm going to dive a little deeper into some of the separate pillars so you can get a better grasp or a better idea or better concept. Or I hope I give you enough time to respond to this podcast so I can field some of your questions. When I was younger, and it's kind of funny, and I'm probably sure you heard this, my mother once said, "A closed mouth won't get fed." Very few of us, if any, can read a mind. I really believe that we still care. I really believe that. That's my faith. I don't want to say we don't care anymore. But a thought without action is only a dream. So let's get busy and let's get out there, take some steps to restore hope back into this community. Until next time, this is me, Anthony Brown. Glad you was able to join me in today's podcast.